Okay.
My phone says we're live.
Hello to all antagonists who are actually here already. If you are, congratulations. My name is Brittany, in case you don't know. And today I have myself playing in the background. Okay, pause that. Sorry. Today I have three guests, and we're going to be talking about publishing, self-publishing versus traditional publishing versus hybrid publishing. So I'm going to go through you guys one by one, and you can introduce yourselves. Do we have a volunteer who wants to start?
I can start.
Okay.
So I am Corey Lynn Arnold. I have three self-published novels and one traditionally published novel called Thin Luck. And I don't know what else you want me to say.
No, that's good. Good job.
Thanks.
Who's next?
I'm Ayla. I have one self-published novel right now. I'm publishing the second one, the follow-up to that one, in October.
Awesome. And last but certainly not least,
I am Rebecca, and I have been traditionally published with one of my... Where are you going, Brittany? I've been traditionally published with one of my plays entitled The Family Fruitcake through Eldridge Publishing. Full disclosure, I have also been independently published, but that was in an anthology, and my writers group and the writers group had handled everything, so I don't know how it all works. So that's why I'm not talking about that.
That's fair. Sorry, I did get up for a second. I needed my charger. So that is everybody, and we did not have any questions submitted yet on Twitter. So if anybody watching has any questions, we do have a comment section to the side or this side that you should see on the screen, and you can say anything you want there. You can submit questions. They can be questions in general, questions for a specific guest, whatever you want to ask. Or if you want, you can submit them on Twitter still. I will try to check that on my phone as we go. And that's really it as far as question asking goes. Now, I have seen a couple of questions, not specifically for this live stream, but just a couple of questions about publishing in general. A lot of people want to know really what are the pros and cons of each one. And I think a lot of it depends on going writer to writer, but are there any specific pros to the method that you guys chose? I mean, other than going both ways, obviously. But what do you guys think are the best perks of the publishing route that you chose?
Well, traditional, I can definitely say there's a lot less legwork. You know, I mean, once you get over the hurdle of getting accepted, of course, it's a big one. But then, you know, they send you they say you got accepted. Is that cool? You say, yeah, you're damn right. And then they send you the contract. You look it over. Always read your contract, and you know, ask if you're not sure. Ask people who know, an attorney or other writers, whoever. But mine was fairly straightforward, thank goodness. And send it back, and then they handle pretty much everything. My company has a catalog and everything that they send out to theaters. So they handle a lot of that. Of course, I still need to handle a lot of the marketing and whatnot, which I am total crap at. So I'm looking to ramp that up. So they do some of that. But of course, if you don't get their catalog or you've never heard of the publisher, or you're not in theater, you're not going to know. So marketing's a big thing. And so even if you're traditionally published, that doesn't necessarily mean your stuff's going to get out there. I'd say that's still a major thing. But other than that, I mean, you don't need to worry about printing or anything like that. I didn't need to monkey around with that. I still have no idea how that's done. trying to think. I think that's the most major difference. I mean, of course, as a play author, there are other differences, but, you know, I can't speak to like publishing a novel or anything like that. It's a different, slightly different process, I imagine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Going off of what Rebecca said, it is easier for sure. You don't have to do all the work, your legwork yourself, and I definitely felt like the editing was a lot smoother, and the whole process, you know, ramping up to the release was a lot smoother and a lot easier and a lot less kind of gut-wrenching than the process I had for self-publishing.
Cool. Very cool. Anything to add from Miss Ayla over there?
Well, when you self-publish, you have complete control over everything, which is beautiful and also a pain in the ass. For someone like me who likes to have control over absolutely everything, it works well for me. I think that there's still a lot of stigma around self-publishing, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I think the biggest thing for me, the biggest positive, is just being able to have control over everything.
Cool. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, as I was saying, and I think I said this before we went live, so you guys probably didn't hear it, but I have not published anything major. I've done short stories and articles, but that was all for specific projects like contests, or there's a college here locally that puts out a book filled with short stories and poems and things like that, and you can submit to that. And if they like you, they put you in. There's no prize, no nothing. Just if they like you, it's like, yay, I've been published in something. And that's really it. But my plan, if I ever finish editing the several novels sitting on my tablet here, is to do a hybrid sort of publishing idea, because I've read about a lot of people who have done so, because I really want to go the traditional route, but I also want to retain my rights over the electronic side of my book. So I just basically want to retain rights and control over like ebooks, but still be traditionally published. I feel like it's the best of both worlds, and it's also the best for your wallet. So if you can get a company to agree, then you won't be quite as much of a starving writer as, you know, some people are. So that's my plan. Don't know if it's going to work out. I have to actually finish a book first, so that needs to happen. So I am going to take a brief look on Twitter, see if you have any questions. Does anybody have anything they want to talk about while I do so? So you're not just sitting here staring at me when I'm looking down at my phone. Anything? Anybody? What are some questions that you guys have been asked, like, since you've been published? Like, is there a general question, like a specific question that people ask once they find out, hey, you actually published something? Like, is there a question that tends to come up from other writers or friends and family?
How much money do I make?
And what do you tell them? I make pennies.
I hear it looks like a real book a lot.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Real and everything. Oh, that's terrible. What about you, Rebecca? What's the number one comment or question you get?
I can't off the top of my head think of anything. I mean, I've gotten plenty from like friends and family, like, what? You know, you published a book and everything, but then they ask what it's about. And, you know, they don't ask about the process because that's boring stuff to them. I can't think of anything. You want to ask me a question? You got a question for me, Brittany?
Oh,
See, not so easy, is it?
I know, it doesn't help. I don't see so far any questions, which stinks because I don't have any. I mean, I've answered a lot of my own questions.
I've got a sad story to share about my traditional publishing. So
Oh gosh. Okay.
are you
Share
all
away.
are you all ready? Strap in. So here's my story. I sent my manuscript around to agents, and I wasn't getting a lot of, actually I was getting a lot of hits. They all asked for the whole manuscript, or not all, but a lot of them asked for the whole manuscript. But then like 2 months would go by and I didn't hear anything. And I got kind of disheartened, and I started going along the indie publishing. So, I did the whole agent thing, and I wasn't getting great follow through with that. So then I started doing indie publishing, and I sent it around to a bunch of indie publishers. I actually sent it to a contest, and I got like third or something. And one of the indie publishers actually contacted me after I got third, and they said, "Oh, here's an offer," and they sent me a contract. And like I said, that whole process went very, very smoothly. Getting the editing, I didn't really like the cover, but that's the kind of thing where I was going from being self-published to being traditionally published, so I didn't have too much choice. I didn't like it, but it wasn't like it was horrible. It didn't set the right tone for me. And then but I signed the contract. I had already gone through the process, and they, released it. And I got some sales and things, and then my publisher went out of business. So I have been working for the last year and a half to try and get my rights back, but there has been nothing. So they actually never paid me for the books that got sold.
Oh.
I did get my rights back recently, but Amazon is still selling under that publishing company. So if it gets sold through Amazon, I've gone to Amazon, and I've like filled out all the forms, and I've talked to them a bunch of times, and they keep saying, "Oh yeah, okay," and then they don't actually do anything to cut off their connection or whatever. But so if I get sold under anything but Amazon, I get the money. But if it gets sold under Amazon right now, then they get the old cover, and it still goes somewhere off to the publisher that no longer exists.
Oh.
So that's my sad story.
So that's horrifying.
But
for anybody who's not published.
It can happen, and it's not even unusual. I've actually talked with people on, I think it was on Facebook, where it's happened. So I actually just took my manuscript and I put it on Wattpad just because I was upset about the whole situation, and I've gotten a lot of really good feedback on Wattpad. And so I was just like, I decided to make everything free, and it's just out there, and I'm not making any money off of it, but at the same time, it's out there, and I'm happy that it is. So
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way it goes. It doesn't always work out for the best.
That's true. I mean, I think a lot of times we hear stories about like those 1 in a million shots, like J.K. Rowling, like, oh man, she was writing on napkins and now she's a multimillionaire or whatever, or now she's not because she donates so much or whatever. So I think as writers, we all sort of hope, like in the back of our minds, like, oh, maybe that'll be me too. Like, maybe I'll have a bestseller. Maybe I'm going to be awesome too. And then I don't think the downside of things and the potential for things to go wrong, I don't think we really focus on that as much, which is probably because as writers, we can imagine like the worst possible things happening that will never happen. Like your publisher comes at you with a butcher's knife or something in the middle of the night. Like, I hate your novel. Like, which obviously is not going to happen. So I'm sorry if I freaked anybody out. But I'm just saying, like, it's good to hear about things that don't go right.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we just focus on things that do as writers. And that's great. Like, it's good to have those stories of things that can go right. But it's also good to understand that this industry is not guaranteed by any means.
Right.
So thanks for sharing. That was awesome.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have any sort of story that they want to share about their publishing journey?
Well, I had a self-publishing nightmare. And I think you remember when I told you I needed you to read to make sure I didn't have any formatting errors on the ebook.
Yeah. Yes.
I actually purchased a interior layout design for my first book and love the interior of the paperback. But the creator actually inserted themselves into the metadata of the book as the publisher and the author. So when I removed that from the metadata is when all of my ebook formatting went haywire. What a cutie. It completely changed everything about the interior of my ebook, and it was horrible. And I didn't know it until after it went live on Amazon, and I had to take it down. It was the worst launch day that I could have ever imagined.
Yeah, and I do remember that because for those of you who don't know, I do have a website that I haven't touched in several months where I was attempting to whittle down my TBR pile, which didn't really work out because I keep buying more, but still. The idea was I was going to read them and review them as I went because that would be motivation to keep reading them. So I had this website up, and I hadn't even reviewed anything. It was just sort of sitting there. And Ayla comes to me in a panic and asks me to read through her book and look for the formatting issues and find out if everything was fine. And the only real way to do that is to read the whole thing. And she sent me the whole thing. So I'm like, all right, I'll just read this. I have it now. And I ended up really enjoying it despite myself. I didn't want to enjoy it because it's not a genre that I usually read. But it was very good, and I was very impressed. So I ended up reviewing it. That was the first review that I actually put up on my site. So that's how that ended up happening. But thankfully, I didn't see any formatting errors when I went through it, so you must have already fixed it by then.
I don't think I slept for like 72 hours. I was just fixing everything that I could possibly find to fix.
Mm-hmm.
That was rough. And I can't sit here and say that it was the company that made the layout. I have no proof other than the fact that it was fine until I took them out of the metadata as the author and publisher of my novel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so rough. Like, I can't even imagine. I would not deal with that well. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I had a cat here who was trying to eat my toes, and I think. Sorry, I just received a notification, and I think it might be a question. So I'm going to take a quick peek into that. Do you have any stories, Rebecca, while I load this up since my computer's slow as that?
Stories. A couple of things made me think. What Corey was saying about not liking the cover. Yeah, I mean that's part of like I was saying with you cede part of your control, and of course that's part of it. I didn't get any say whatsoever in the cover, and I love my publisher. We've had a great relationship and worked all this stuff out, and everything's gone wonderfully, and I do not like the cover. It is a really boring cover, and like the poster that we had at the theater when we originally did it was great and fantastic, and I was thinking, should I send them that and be like, here, just suggestion. But it's not like they were going to reprint it or anything like that. They already print so many, and so stuff like that, you just kind of have to say, okay, it is what it is. It's what I agreed to. And that's just part of what you got to live with. And the other thing I was thinking of is indie publishing, just coming at it from the point of view of a reader. I've read a few indie books now from people I know on Twitter, and I don't think I've read a bad story yet. Completely honestly, there are so many good stories out there, and a lot of people are really good writers. But one thing I think a lot of people forget is not only the formatting, but the editing. I've read a few that just don't seem to have been edited at all. And it's not only for spelling or grammar errors, but just it all impedes the flow of the story. So that, I mean, I'm really, personally, I'm really fussy about that sort of thing. And just like, I'm the sort of person who gets in, like, every paragraph and every sentence, you know, has to be crafted, or, you know, at least try. And when I read something like that, it's, well, the story just doesn't flow as well. So from, like I say, from a reader's perspective, I suggest that anybody who's going to indie publish really has to put in the time to make sure that it's edited properly. And if you're just plain not a good editor, which some of us are not, you know, and that's fine, then enlist help. You know, there's no shame in that, and your book is just going to be so much better for it. It's like, I read these stories and they're so good, and I'm like, they could be that much better. They could be that much greater. And yeah, editing is important.
Yes, it is. I completely agree. Like 100%. I'm kind of a grammar Nazi. I know a lot of people don't like that term because it's not PC, but I don't care. So I put out, we did not have any questions on Twitter. My notification was for something else. But I put out a question on another writing platform that I'm on, just asking if anybody had any questions about publishing. And I explained what we're doing here, how we're talking about self-publishing versus traditional publishing. And one of the questions that I got was, for all of you, what is something that you really, the way this is phrased is weird, but basically, what's one aspect of the type of publishing that you did not choose that you wish yours did? Like, if you're self-published, what's something about traditional publishing that you like better than what you got with self-publishing, and vice versa? Like, if you could take one aspect of the opposite sort of publishing and make it into whatever you did choose, what would you want?
Upfront money.
Yeah, pay advance is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you don't
Anybody else?
you don't always get that with traditional publishing either, so.
True.
Well, in
true,
theory.
Right.
Well, like I was saying, it would be nice to have the control with the covers and stuff like that. So I wouldn't mind a little more control from my end. But other than that, I like not having to worry about it. So that's all I can think of right now. If I think of something else, I'll mention it.
Okay.
Yeah, so actually, so for my self-publishing, I think not having so much investment in all the editing and the cover up front would be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so basically, control and money is what I'm hearing from basically everybody. Control and money. That, I mean, and that's kind of what I expected, to be honest, when I asked the question. So I wasn't disappointed. Thank you, ladies. Let me see here.
So I have a quick story about editing, going off of
Okay.
something Rebecca said. So I recently had a short story published with one of my writers groups on a anthology, and we hired like a super professional editor. She's been editing for like 30 or 40 years or something, and she's super awesome. And I had a really short story. I think it was like 6 pages or something like that. And the continuity things that she found, I was like, how did you even, like, what kind of, how do you think that way and go into such huge detail with a 6-page story? Like, she had this whole thing worked out about where the apartment was in the story, and I hadn't really, that was the one thing I hadn't really thought about. And I was like, oh, I guess I said it was on the second story and all the way towards the end, and then in this other part I said you could see it from the office, but that would be kind of hard. And she just like went into this huge detail about being able to see the apartment from the office. And I was like, I didn't really think about it that way, you know, and I didn't really detail where the office was, but she kind of gleaned from other clues where it was. And I was just so impressed with how much continuity detail she went into, much less, you know, she had a lot of grammar things. And, you know, there was one thing that I didn't really like she changed in the dialogue, but that was the only thing we disagreed on. But the continuity thing, I was just really impressed with how much effort she put into that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's awesome. I mean, that's hopefully an experience that most people have with their editor. I mean, they should pick up on things that you don't. Even if you're really anal about things, like they should still find things that you're like, oh, okay. Because I mean, as a writer, you're looking at your work over and over and over and over and over until you hate it and you want to throw in a trash can or just throw your tablet / laptop / desktop, whatever, out the freaking window because you can't stand reading it anymore. So I think you get used to the fact that as you're reading, your mind may be automatically editing as you go, but that doesn't mean that everybody else can read it and make sense of it. So it's good to have an editor who's like, hey, this doesn't make sense. And since it's something that didn't even occur to you, that's even better. I mean, rather than just grammatical errors. Yeah. So awesome.
Yeah. That's a good point. Even if you're naturally a good editor, always get a second pair of eyes because anybody can miss something. And I wanted to bring up another point just real quick. If you are traditionally published, or even if you're independent, if you have somebody else edit your work and bring it back, read it over. Read every single bit over. Because I got the edit back from my publisher, and they had changed a couple of lines. And I was like, you did what? You know, why would you change the dialogue on me? So I had to, you know, I sent him back a very nice detailed explanation of, you know, the line is this way, and it's this way for this reason. Like, you don't go changing somebody else's work like that. So yeah, always read it over and make sure that it's saying what you want it to say.
Mm-hmm. And that is a really important point. I mean, traditionally published or not, you are the writer. And just because somebody edits your work doesn't mean you have to keep it that way. You're not going to agree with everything your editor says. Some of it is stylistic preferences. Some of it, maybe somebody is speaking incorrectly and sounds like a backwoods bum because they are. And they may correct that automatically, but now it doesn't make sense because this person is speaking like a sophisticated city person when they've never read a book, you know? So you need to make sure you're paying attention to what your editor is doing and not just being like, oh, I accept all of these changes. And then your book comes out and you read it and you're like, what is this? This isn't what I wrote at all. So yes, definitely pay attention to what your editor is doing, please. I did have a question. Do you regret choosing the route that you did for publishing?
Me, yes.
No.
So no from Ayla, yes from Corey. Okay.
I do not regret it. I love, you know, like I say, I love not having to worry about so much, particularly as a playwright, because there's a lot of, you know, you have to get your work out to so many different theaters and coordinate with them and work out royalties. I mean, it's complications I do not wish to have to deal with myself. Though if I don't publish another play, I may have to. So I traditionally publish. Yeah.
If I could go back for just 1 second and give a tip to anyone out there who is thinking of self-publishing, when it comes to editing, you do want to make sure that you're incorporating other people into looking at your work, whether it's beta readers or even just your spouse, just giving it a once over and saying, you know, this doesn't make sense. When it comes to more line editing, I found a great tool in something called Pro Writing Aid. That is my go-to over Grammarly. I don't particularly care for that service. But Pro Writing Aid, check them out. They are really excellent when it comes to finding all those, oh, you shouldn't have used a semicolon here type deals.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I can always use more help, so thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do have another question here. Now, this one is for anybody who's been self-published. I have somebody who is interested in self-publishing their own work, and they have no idea how to get started. So what is the first major step, I guess, other than writing something, that you took to be self-published?
Research.
Yes. Figuring out how you want to distribute it.
Mm-hmm.
Is it important to you to have your ebook in every single format that has ever been created? Because for a while you could find mine on these crazy Japanese websites and all that, but it was costing me more to have it on all those avenues, and I realized I was making 99.5% of my sales on Amazon anyway. But for someone else, it might be very beneficial to have yours in every single outlet. That's probably the number one thing, is just really deciding what you want and researching the best way to get that. I mean, it's going to be different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So true.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
I mean, everyone thinks that it's as simple as saying, oh, sorry. Everyone thinks it's as simple as saying, okay, I'm going to put this up on Amazon and Amazon's going to do everything else for me, but that's just not the case.
Get a really good cover.
Yeah,
that
all the difference.
If you're going to make your own cover, about covers, because I made my own, but if you're going to make your own cover, look at it in thumbnail size before you decide anything else, because that's the way everyone is going to see it. So if your title is so super small that in thumbnail size it's illegible, then it's not going to do you any good.
Yeah. There's some really good cover artists out there that are available for self-publishing, and I found one that I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but it wasn't very expensive and they do a great job. But I think there's a ton of them out there right now, so if you're not willing to do your own, or if you don't have a lot of experience with graphic, then I think it's a good investment to get a super awesome cover done by a professional.
Yeah, if you can't make your own and it doesn't look decent, then definitely you need to outsource that. That's something you don't want to skimp on.
Yeah, that and editing.
We're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but we all do.
We all do.
Exactly.
Well, to build off that, yes, seriously, book covers are so important. I am part of a conversation on Twitter, and I'm not going to mention who else is in it because I don't want to point fingers and make you guys all think that we're laughing at you. Anybody out there watching, but I make a habit whenever a book advertisement comes across my Twitter feed to share it to this group, and we all have a bit of a giggle if the cover is terrible, because there are so many terrible book covers. Like, there are some where it's just, you can tell it was made in Microsoft Paint, and there's just like poorly edited six packs on these guys that have never been to the gym in their life, and they never have a head for some reason. I don't know what it is with headless men. They're not attractive to me. I prefer them having a face. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. That's not what gets me going. But there's some preferences, ladies. It's fine.
Did you see my last blog post where I said something about self-published writers making their covers in Microsoft Paint? Is that where you got that?
I did not actually see that. But I'm just saying, we have a conversation entirely made up of writers, and we go out of our way to find poor book covers and laugh at them. So whoever tells you don't judge a book by its cover, they lied to you. Great in theory when talking about people, but when talking about actual books, don't listen to it. It's terrible. Worst advice ever. I'm just saying. And I had something else to say before you guys got me going on that tangent, and I don't remember what it was now. Dang it!
That's what we do.
Yep, I completely lost it. No idea.
I
had a
thought
good
of something that I don't know if you guys know, but I had a question. I went to a writer's workshop this summer, and one of the guys who was talking, he's made a living out of being a freelance writer on demand, which is pretty neat. And he had a lot of interesting stuff to say, but one of the things he said is that when you put up your work on your blog or anywhere online, it's considered to have been published.
Yep.
And I was like, really? I didn't think just because I put something on my blog, I can take it down again. So how is that published? Is that an actual thing? Do you guys know?
It's a thing if you want to be traditionally published, then if they can find it through internet archives, or if they can scrape through the internet somehow and find it, then they will definitely reject it because it's already been published. That's what he meant. You can't get traditionally published usually if it's been published anywhere on the net or somehow accessible, because they don't want the other version. Although there's always exceptions to that rule, because Andy Weir for The Martian, he was sort of crowdsourcing his book by publishing it chapter by chapter and having scientists kind of vet it and suggest on what things should happen next. And he still got traditionally published with Morrow, I think. So, there's always the exceptions too.
Oh yeah, some other fan fiction.
Oh, yes, fan
Now
fiction.
3-picture deal.
50 Shades of Grey, anyone?
Yeah.
But it's what happens. Like, there's always exceptions. If there's enough, the way that the Andy Weir book worked, there were so many people who were interested in the book, and it was so unusual. I was actually talking to my librarian friends about it, because I have kids come into the library and they're like, I hate books, I hate reading, I hate this and that. And, they're teenagers and they haven't had the experience yet. I usually, slide across The Martian. I'm like, just try this, especially boys. Like, just try this. And it opens with the F word. So, they get pretty excited about that and, and the hard science of it. And it's a thrilling read. So, it makes a difference. And I think that's it was so different. And I think 50 Shades of Grey kind of had a similar thing. It was so different from what was out there that it was able to forge its own path from being self-published to being traditionally published.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is something to remember, going back to the original point that Rebecca made. I've heard the same thing as well. If you want to be traditionally published, don't publish it online.
Yeah.
Because if they can find it, that's considered published already. I mean, even if it's on your personal website, you can delete it, but this is the internet. Nothing's gone forever.
Yeah.
You can still find it.
And you can go from a self-published novel to having it traditionally published.
Yes.
But you have to have a huge amount of interest in the book already. You have to prove that it's something that is worthy of that. And it's very difficult to do. And that's why I guess most people just suggest you don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really need to have a massive following for that to happen. Which, I mean, you should have a good following anyway. I mean, if you're interested in being published, whether it's self-published or traditionally published, I think one thing that we've established here is you're on your own when it comes to marketing, regardless of which method you're choosing. So you need to make sure you have some sort of platform, whether that's Twitter or a blog or something somewhere where you are connecting to people, getting them interested in you as a person and as a writer, getting them interested in your work, and making sure that when you do publish something, they're going to read it and buy it and really validate you as a writer. I mean, I have a Twitter. I signed up for Twitter because people told me, hey, Nobody's on Facebook anymore. All of the agents, all the publishers, everybody's on Twitter. I had a vendetta against Twitter because I was convinced it was just people like tweeting, "I'm on the toilet." So I'm like, not really interested. Finally gave in, signed up, followed every writer I could find that I was interested in, and like a whole bunch of agents and publishers. A month or two later, I unfollowed most of those writers because I found out that they were basically bot accounts and all they did is spam, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. You don't want to follow people like that. So don't become one of those people either. You need to not just post buy links of like, hey, read me. Nobody cares. Nobody wants to hear that. You need to actually connect with people and participate and make friends, make writer friends, because you can complain together about all of the shitty aspects of your hobby / job, depending on where you are in your career. And you can complain to people that get it, which is like the best part because they have the same problems that you do. So just, it's better to connect with people because then when you actually do something and you actually publish something, you have people that like you and they're more apt to go, all right, I'll read this. Like, why not? You're a friend of mine. You're selling an ebook for $1. I guess I can shell it out. And so definitely connect with people. That's so important. I think a lot of people overlook that. They really do. But you need a reader base, and you're not just going to get them out of nowhere. So
you know who my favorite author is for connecting with people on Twitter is Chuck Wendig.
I knew you were going to say that.
I love him. He's so hilarious, and he does really connect with people on Twitter. Like, he's really good. Yeah.
Have you guys ever read any of his books about writing?
Yes.
Okay, so I found him on Twitter quite accidentally. I had never heard of him before. Somebody that I was following retweeted one of his tweets. I don't even remember which one it was. Probably one of the ones about being made out of spiders or something. I don't know. And it was hilarious to me, so I looked on his account, ended up finding some link to all the books that he's written or whatever. And I noticed that he had written a bunch of books about writing. And I'm like, well, he seems like a funny guy. These are probably great. Oh my God. I bought a bundle that had like 5 or 6 of them all in one. And they were all ebooks. And, well, first of all, easiest reads for an instructional book that I've ever read because each page is like super spaced out. And it's not like, you're not reading chunks of text. It's just like, stop being a shithead or something like that. Like, it's just, it is the best. I mean, it was quality advice while making you laugh. I mean, I read one in about an hour because it was just, it was fabulous.
Yeah, I agree. And he's like the metaphor king, which is like my thing. So I really enjoy reading his stuff. I enjoy reading his books. I've recently read Blackbirds, but also I've read like 500 Ways to Write Harder and a couple other ones. And I've had the same experience where it's like I read it in like an hour or 2 hours and I was like, I got a lot out of that.
Yeah, ditto everything, because I had never heard of him either, and then I started following him and like, oh my gosh, this guy's hilarious. And I haven't yet, but that does make me want to read his books. So, you know, that sort of thing definitely works. If you show interest in people, they're more likely to show interest in you.
Yeah, absolutely. I did get another question, and I don't remember it, so give me a second. Okay, for the traditionally published folks in the room, what are some ways to get noticed by a publisher? And I'm not really sure how to take that question. I mean, obviously having something that's written well, but do you have any tips for getting noticed by a publisher or an agent? Is there any specific ways that you've noticed has worked versus not worked?
Yeah, when everyone figures that out, then we'll all know.
From my end, I think it helped because I was able to fill never say that word right, niche, or you know what I mean. Because I wrote a family Christmas play, and there are just not enough of them out there. And that's why I wrote it in the first place, is I overheard some of my theater people saying, oh, there's just not enough bread and butter Christmas plays that with a lot of kids in them that'll get the butts in the seats and everything. So I'm like, okay, I'll try my hand at that. So I did. And so I think that's mainly what the publisher liked about it. This is something they can sell. Publishing's a business. That's all they're looking for, really, is something they can sell. If it's good, and if it's just plain good and strikes a chord and all this stuff, that's fantastic, and they love that too. But I don't know if that's secondary necessarily. But they got to be thinking about their bottom line. So it really helps if you have something that fills that need. So that's part of marketing too. You have to think about who your market is, who you're selling to.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I don't want to really hit on this because it wasn't something that won the poll, and I have a feeling it's going to end up being a topic in the future because it was doing really well at some point. But trend writing, don't get that mixed up with having something that you think will sell. Trend writing is a bit dangerous, and we're not going to super go into it, but just be careful when you're thinking about something that you think will sell well versus something that's a fad. Be careful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially because trends are trends, there's something that's currently flooding the market. So there's going to be way too much of that out there already. So you have to think, okay, what's the opposite, or maybe coming at this trend from a different angle or something like that.
But that's kind of different from what you did, Rebecca. You found something that was missing and then filled that gap. And I think that's probably better than trying to write towards a trend, but actually find a gap and fill that in.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
I know this was geared towards people that had been traditionally published, but just because you're self-publishing something does not give you an excuse to say, I'm self-publishing because this could not get the attention of an agent or a publisher. You still want to write. You still want to write something to a degree that it could, and look at it as you're putting the best work forward, regardless of which avenue you plan on taking.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. I know the person that asked this question was specifically talking about traditional publishing, but that's a really good point. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. As far as publishing goes, I have not thoroughly read, but I have skimmed and I have seen several books which should have never been self-published. Just because, I know everybody has different tastes, and that's fine. But if you are self-publishing something because no agent in their right mind would touch it within a 10-foot pole, maybe you should reconsider. Just throwing that out there.
Yep.
Yeah, even if it's self-publishing, traditional publishing, it's still a business, even if you're in business for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't want to put something out there that's not going to make you any money or have anybody read it. Even if you're not in it for the money, which you should never be a writer for the money because you'll die poor. But I would like to think that people write because they want somebody to read it. That's kind of the point. So if you aren't in it for the money and you are in it for the readership, you should probably write something that's going to get more readers than just your mom. Just a suggestion. The stuff that I write, my mom won't even read. So I would be completely screwed without friends. Oh, gosh.
It's true. It's true, though. There are a lot of self-published titles out there that when you read them, it looks more like a first draft. In fact, in my last blog post, I think I said it looked like a drunken second grader that was in timeout had written it. And, and you don't want that. So just that's why I think there's such a huge stigma around self-publishing, is because so many people do that. They think, oh, I'm just self-publishing. It doesn't matter if I give this a second glance. So I'm just going to throw it up on Amazon. And that happens a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, an unfortunate amount of times. I don't remember the name, and even if I did, I probably wouldn't say, but I did purchase an ebook probably a month or two ago. The title was interesting. The summary was interesting. The cover was okay. It wasn't fantastic, but it wasn't terrible. Never heard of the writer before. I'm pretty sure it was a debut novel. It was off Amazon. And it had a fantastic premise. It could be a really good book, but it wasn't. It was obvious that it was a first draft. There were a lot of holes, a lot of editing errors, a lot of just places where I was left going, what? Like, how did we get to this point?
I've had that happen for traditional published stuff too.
Well, yes, I have seen that happen in traditionally published things too, but I could tell from what I was reading that this person was a good writer. There were chunks that were really solid and that probably would have made it to a finished piece. And the style was great, and the idea was fantastic, but because they had, I mean, I'm just assuming, but because it was self-published, because it was on Amazon, my assumption is they didn't read it after they had written it. They didn't bother going over it. I mean, I could tell in glimpses that they did know how to write and they did know proper grammar and they could do it. It's just a matter of, I mean, maybe they were just writing super quickly and just wanted to get it out so they could say, hey, I published something. Lack of attention. I don't know. I don't know what the error was. But it was really sad because now it's out there and it's out there forever. And they could have made it something really interesting. And I would hope that somebody would bring that to their attention and maybe they'd release like a new edition or something where everything makes sense and is all pretty and polished and whatever. But I doubt it'll happen because I've seen it more than once. It just stays out there in that condition. And I think that's really sad. So.
Well, my nephew can tell time. And he is peeking in the door. So,
let me take a quick peek, see if I have any other quick questions here. And I'm not really seeing any. So do you guys have any, before we go, just a last comment or recommendations to people that are looking into publishing, one versus the other? Anything you want to say?
Don't just take the first contract that comes along, and do your homework and figure out who you're publishing with if you're traditionally publishing, and look at some of the other works that they've done and make sure it's somebody you're really comfortable with. It's tempting to go with that first publisher, whoever gives you a contract, because you're, I personally was willing to sell my soul for being traditionally published. But it obviously didn't work out in the end. So, good luck. But be out there and keep trying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I'm going to think of like 5 billion things as soon as we're done. But I think I thought of everything I have for right now. Like Corey said, good luck to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go into self-publishing if you're not willing to wear all the hats that come along with it. If you're not willing to do everything yourself, it's probably not going to be for you because it's a lot of work. It's not It's not something that's super simple. That doesn't mean don't do it, because it has a lot of rewards. And best of luck to you. Just keep doing your own research and figuring that out.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, coming from somebody who is not yet published in either format, I mean, that's what I'm doing. That's the process that I'm in, other than editing, obviously, is research. I'm trying to see, I mean, a hybrid is my plan, but is that the best for me? I think it is right now, but that doesn't mean I'm going to stop researching and making sure that I know everything that goes into both methods, because I don't want to make one choice and then wish I had made another later. But definitely always research. I mean, you're good at it. You're a writer, so just buckle up, Buttercup, and figure it out. And if you don't know, ask. I mean, I'm assuming if you're watching this, you're on Twitter, because that's the only place I've really advertised this. So you're on Twitter. There is a massive writing community on there. So many people you can ask, and I am not the only one posting videos on YouTube about it. By far, there are other people that I am subscribed to, and I watch them religiously, and there's help out there. There's advice out there. If you need it, just go find it. And I think that's really all we have for today. Thank you for watching, and I will have a poll up probably tomorrow or Monday, asking what you guys want to see next weekend. It'll have the 3 losing votes from this week and then 1 new one. So if anybody has any suggestions of things that they'd like to see, please let me know, because my idea well will run dry someday. And I need all the help I can get. So that's goodbye from me. Everybody wave. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.